You're fixing the tweets and changing the quotes and editing the audio and putting out brazen lies. And so the whole thing became ridiculous.
There are some key facts that the Democrats didn't want to talk about, like the fact that the pipe bombs were discovered before the president's speech, like the fact that the FBI knew there was a planned attack, like the fact that the president said peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
The point is that if you wanted to actually bring the strongest possible impeachment charge, what you actually would have done is, the basic research.
The Senate has voted not to convict Donald Trump in his impeachment trial, making him the most acquitted president in American history. Nobody more innocent than Donald Trump.
Great news for the country. I mean, remember what the Democrats were trying to do, Maria? They were trying to cancel the guy that 74 million Americans voted for because they didn't want him to be on the ballot, have a chance to be on the ballot in 2024. And they were so obsessed with this, going after the president, that they were willing to ignore the Constitution, willing to ignore due process, willing to ignore the facts, willing to doctor evidence, and willing to, at the last minute, try to call witnesses when that made absolutely no sense to do so. So this is how focused and obsessed they've been. It was a good day for the country that the president was acquitted again.
The Democrats put themselves in a very difficult position with this impeachment because they were very inconsistent in their pursuit. First, they said it was a crisis. Then they said it was not a crisis. First, they said that it was about incitement for insurrection, and then they said it was about Trump's general activity between November and January 6th. Well, they didn't try to bring an impeachment charge against him in December, and he was saying exactly the same things in January as he was saying in December.
It's very obvious that the whole point of impeachment was to prevent Trump from being able to run again. And the Democrats went all in on this, and so, of course, did their allies in the media. And the whole thing kind of imploded on them. It was kind of like a magic show. I almost envision a magic show where the magician is this kind of malevolent guy. He goes, yeah, here's my first trick, here's my second trick. And every time he does his tricks, there's a little kid in the audience who goes, I gotcha, I know how you did that one. Hey, listen, the money's still in your pocket. And the magician keeps getting angrier and angrier because he's busted every time by this annoying kid who catches him, you may say, in the act. And that's what it was like. The Trump lawyers were like, busted, busted, busted again. You're fixing the tweets and changing the quotes and editing the audio and putting out brazen lies. And so the whole thing became ridiculous.
See, this was the big problem. There were two big problems with the Democrats' impeachment push. One was the actual impeachment charge, which centered around incitement. Incitement is very difficult to prove. Suggesting that Trump, quote unquote, incited the riot when he said to peacefully and patriotically march down to the Capitol to show displeasure. That is not a particularly convincing argument because, again, incitement is a pretty high bar. And suggesting that it was incitement to insurrection is a double high bar because, again, you have to show, number one, that it was incitement, and number two, that Trump actually wanted an insurrection, not just people to go and do something criminal. He wanted an insurrection to overthrow the United States government, which, again, there's very little evidence of.
Look, Maria, there are some key facts that the Democrats didn't want to talk about, like the fact that the pipe bombs were discovered before the president's speech, like the fact that the FBI knew there was a planned attack, like the fact that the president said peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard, and maybe most important, the fact that they didn't want was Officer Son had asked for the National Guard to be present there beforehand. So the reason they pulled back is we were going to call those witnesses.
Meanwhile, the Democrats are still trying to make an excuse for why exactly they didn't call the witnesses. Because, again, if they wanted to show not only incitement, but that there was action by Trump on January 6th to, for example, hold up the sending of law enforcement, well, then now would have been the time. Jamie Raskin was trying to make excuses for this. He's like, well, but you know what? No matter what we said, Republicans would have just voted to acquit. And number one, that may very well be true, but that's not the point. The point is that if you wanted to actually bring the strongest possible impeachment charge, what you actually would have done is, the basic research. You still have to provide the evidence. If you don't provide the evidence, you actually leave Republicans with the perfectly plausible defense that you guys didn't provide the evidence of the chief charge that you were attempting to make.
What was so wonderful is that the American people could see it. They saw it for themselves, and the press had to show it. So just what I was hoping for, that the Trump attorneys would turn the tables, put the Democrats on trial, that's exactly what they did.